I'm here with somebody who is beyond a legend in this community and somebody who's about to become a legend in this community. But here at Mixed Blood, I'm here with Jack Reuler, who I've known for many, many years. And aside, you'll see the Twins logo, aside from being one of the most knowledgeable Twins fans, Jack has led Mixed Blood for
46 years.
Yeah, basically since dinosaurs roamed the earth, but really has been at a time now where every art institution I know of is really wrestling with how do they look at equity and how do they use arts to really open doors and make change. I don't need to give you any lecture on that, Jack, because from the very beginning, that's what Mixed Blood has been about. So what I'd like to do is to spend a couple minutes getting to know Mark, putting that in the context of where Mixed Blood has been, and then where we're moving forward, if that's okay with you two.
No, it's great. I have the privilege of being the second best artistic director in Mixed Blood's history as of right now, as Mark Valdez becomes the artistic director of Mixed Blood and will lead us into the next chapter and future of how we realize our mission and let that evolve and mature.
So introduce him to us.
So this is Mark Valdez. And Mark and I have known each other for over 15 years. He's directed 9 shows at Mixed Blood, but it's really more, he has been my sage and mentor as it comes to how the arts can really engage imagination and advance civic practices on a large scale. And so when the board went to do its succession process, which was 20 months long, and Mark was the culmination of that, I couldn't have been more thrilled. So. Now moving to Minneapolis from Los Angeles, and but a long-time participant in the Twin Cities arts community is Mark Valdez.
Well, welcome to town, Mark. I want to spend let's start with you telling just in a short way where you're going to this theater. Then I want to back up a little bit and put it in the context of Mixed Blood's history, and then we'll spend even more time going on it. But how did you get to know Mixed Blood?
Got to know Mixed Blood through Jack Reuler. You know, we met, and I think there was just a shared values around what we think that we can do with theater and the role of theater in our communities and society, and based on that, we just developed a friendship and developed some work. And so I think coming into this position, you know, it's really honoring and building on all the work that happened previously. Like there's a lot of really amazing work, and I think an area that Mixed Blood has just excelled in is that equity conversation of sharing stories, creating new plays that allowed audiences to place themselves in an understanding of what is happening in terms of our conversations around race and equity and diversity. And I think where we want to go with it as we move forward is to continue those conversations, but to allow areas for audiences to take action. So to go that next step. So you get inspired, you form some curiosity. So like, what do you do now? And like, how do we actually use these tools to think about policy change, for instance, or to think about like actual systemic change? And so using the plays and the performances as entrance ramps for change.
So how literally do you mean that? Like, will you get a petition as you walk out the theater?
Exactly. Like it really is working with advocates and activists and aligning with campaigns, aligning with work that is happening that is really trying to shift the needle. And how can we think about, I mean, what I think we do as artists is we're really good at narrative, right? And I think a lot of the things that holds us back as communities, societies, is we're stuck in old narratives. And so like we can shift those narratives. We can change the story. We can make it more complicated. We can provide space for imagination to see what is possible, to see beautiful futures. We've just been fed dystopian futures for so long now that I think that's all we can imagine. We're so stuck in politics and you know, just discord that we stopped imagining what it actually looks like if it works.
Well, this is a really fascinating time to be talking about narrative here, because in a community where George Floyd was murdered, where narratives that we've told each other for decades are being disrupted, here we are in the West Bank where the real narrative of this community keeps getting formed and reformed as different people come to town and all that. How uncomfortable do you want to make people here?
So like in this show that we did around affordable housing, we invited the audience to participate in a line dance. Yeah, so like there's something right there that just in the act of like having to move on a kind of rhythm in public with other people, you already have to shift something in your body and your psyche that will then open you up to think about other things.
That's really exciting. I want to hear more about this. Let's take a couple minutes to put this in a perspective, because I've sat in this room, theater, many different times and have come out of here opened, conflicted, challenged, pissed maybe sometimes. I mean, this has been a place that's been about disruption in a community that hasn't always loved disrupting itself. How did, you're looking back over a pretty remarkable body of work here, Jack, at a time that is sobering at best here in the community. How do you look at that path? Take us back to this starting and walk us up to where you got Mixed Blood.
Yeah, and disrupting injustice is what we've been about from the beginning, and really one of my guiding principles is if the seats are full and the audience is smiling and the politicians are quiet, we're doing something wrong. And so we've tried to stay with that. But I really came to theater as an activist. I wasn't an artist who used the art for my activism. I really, I started as an activist. Cliched as it may be, I was a disciple of Martin Luther King. I believed in what he believed in. He was dead 8 years before Mixed Blood started, and it was a time when the melting pot theory was sort of the prevailing racial politics in America, which was a time when people were supposed to pay no attention to difference, and I believed, and Dr. King had taught me to believe, that we wanted to pay positive attention to difference, and that is where we started. And while we certainly have evolved and matured as an organization, and me as an activist, that was paying positive attention to difference was at the heart of who we were. And plural, the language changed. It went from pluralism to now equity, but it was all on the same path. And so we've done that using theater and other art forms, but not only here in this Alan Page Auditorium and this 1887 Minneapolis fire station, but throughout the state and the upper Midwest and in lots of places in the public and private sector, using theater to try to affect change.
I want to pull back to that point about not being a melting pot and understanding difference. And you and I had that exchange about that term that you never liked and said was exactly what you weren't doing, which is colorblind casting. But taking that even outside of art for a second, I mean, certainly many of us came of age in a period of time where the thing we thought we were supposed to do is to not see race. And you had a very different philosophy about what we should see.
We did, and there was, I had someone took me under his wing, a university professor, sort of really one of the fathers of black theater in the Twin Cities, Horace Bond, and he directed and wrote some shows for us in the 70s and said, what we're doing here is colorblind casting. I said, well, you're the professor, that must be what it was. And so that expression got attached to us, but it really was identity conscious casting is what we've been doing. We called it culture conscious casting and other things over time, but it's really people bring who they are and what they are to what it is we do here to make it a richer artistic experience and a richer personal experience. But yeah, and so I think that was that journey, but I really think that a number of things were sort of benchmarks along the way. Once we came into this thing called radical hospitality about a dozen years ago, which wasn't just about eliminating, demonetizing theater, but rather about eliminating any barriers people had to participation in live theater in general and Mixed Blood more specifically. And then really COVID and George Floyd changed this organization in dramatic ways to go from, we started strategic planning on March 18th of 2020, like a week after things were going, just said the world is changing, we need to reinvent ourselves. And the biggest thing we came out of that, instead of doing the shows that we've done, really interesting shows, impeccably produced with important messages that led to good conversations on the way home, we said, let's not just reveal the change, let's drive the change we want to do, that we want to see happen. And that's really the next, that's Mixed Blood point 2. 2.0, and that Mark's capable hands will guide us in those directions.
You know, you led all that change, and you're walking into this change in a community right here on the West Bank that more than probably, well, not probably, definitely has been the Ellis Island of our community. It is where Scandinavian immigrants came to work in the mills. It's where Southeast Asian immigrants came. It's where Somali immigrants came. It's a place that has really been about creating what would almost be a counter narrative to what people assume or project onto this place. How, could we, both of you, help a little bit with just physically where you sit and in this one piece of this community? What does the West Bank mean to Mixed Blood and to this narrative that you're creating?
Sure, man. I think you have the statistics in your head.
Well, I do, you know, and when we started Mixed Blood, you know, Mary Tyler Moore theoretically lived in the
right, that's true.
next door to us. And
Right.
so it went from being, there's 5,000 people that live on our block, and they come from 63 countries, and they speak 92 languages, and it's primarily an immigrant, refugee, Muslim community. And Mixed Blood really 20-some years ago, when that demographic changed, we said we either need to become an anchor in the community we've been in all this time, or we're going to become an island. And we chose the former of that, and really we spent the last 22 years trying to be not only good neighbors, but a place of assembly. And we did a lot of things stupidly, each year a little less stupid than the year before, to really try to. And as Mark came in to do other work as a resident artist, it was really about having a good neighbor policy and how do we be an integral part of the world in which we live. And so programmatically over 22 years we've done more and more, and we try to use art not necessarily as a product but as a tool. How do we use the craft of theater to affect change in attitude and policy and behavior? And then take it from there, Mark. What are some of the things that you've done? And we can talk about the things we've done, but Mark has really been instrumental in helping us you know, open the doors and go out and invite people in.
I'm also interested in, through that context of coming from Los Angeles. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression, Los Angeles is what we're all going to be eventually.
It is.
What can you actually tell us from the future, if you will, or a much more multicultural world of Los Angeles?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a couple of things. So I think this idea of being a good neighbor, I think, is really important to us being here. You know, a few years ago, I was doing the residency here, and just in talking with community members, like a lot of folks who live here in Cedar Riverside are not interested in theater. Like this is not how we're going to serve the community. It's not our role here. But we have this space. So we've been hosting meetings. There've been cooking classes. There've been health classes, mental health seminars. At some point, we were working with young people, and we would go out and just fly kites, or we'd take remote control cars in the park. And all of this is around building these relationships, sharing stories with each other. The things that happen when we come together as people, and our neighbors start to see us as that, as neighbors, as somebody, you know, if you need a cup of sugar, so to speak, you come knock on this door and you know that you're welcome, you know that we're going to be there. And that's really kind of the role that we want to play here in Cedar Riverside, which will be informed by art and theater and storytelling. It's just what we do.
Does that community building have to necessarily play back into art, or is it an end in itself? Like, did you tell a story on stage of what those encounters were, or is that not necessary?
I think we would if our community asked for it. You know what I mean? Like otherwise, then like to tell that story for the city at large, you know, unless there was a really compelling reason, but without the neighborhood saying this is what we want, it feels weird that we would just kind of do that on behalf. So I think co-creating is something that we're really interested in. Is like what is useful to the community here, and how do we talk to the larger Twin Cities, you know, about who we are, what's happening here, what's important to us. You know, so I think definitely, and you know, theater is definitely a part of it. And if the community found that that's what we wanted to do, but it could take place as a health fair, or it could take place just as a music festival, or partnering with the Cedar or some other organizations. So I think we're open to what that could look like.
And if we talk about what we've done over the last 22 years, it really started with a number of these things that seemed like great ideas that turned out to be we were imposing something rather than inviting something. And so there were a lot of great things that happened that didn't work.
We talk about that a lot at the Minneapolis Foundation about not sitting in our office in the IDS and saying to the community, here's another bright idea, but to actually be in a two-way dialogue. And it's I think, a lesson a whole lot of us are learning in a more humbled way.
Listening is the most active ingredient in the new mixed blood. I mean, we always listen, but now it's really how we develop that which we do. Yeah. And it's not let us show you something, it's let us be part of your story.
Let's start with that for a second, and then let's come to the other. How do you come to that idea? How do you make that work? Free tickets.
When we introduced Radical Hospitality, it took the board about 14 months of really chomping on it as a value proposition, and any of a number of other things as it mission driven. And then when they finally decided unanimously to move forward, they said, okay, now how do we pay for it? But yet everybody's first question is usually, how do you afford to do that? But we really said, who do we want to be? Now, how do we get the resources to be that? And so in the course of the dozen years that we've done that, you know, the budget has grown, the organization's been healthier. Radical Hospitality, by getting, you know, where there's certain nonprofit ratios that people look for in earned and contributed income, ours is completely skewed. I mean, we're about 11% earned and 89% contributed, but we've never been healthier. And so by walking our walk and talking our talk, it's allowed us to be who we want to be and moving in directions we hope to move and modeling equity in ways that are not just what happens in the seats and on stage, but in a bigger way.
That's pretty great. Okay, so toward the tickets I'm not going to buy, what will we be able to see here?
You'll be invited to come join us throughout the Twin Cities. So the signature piece for this first year is something I'm calling 12 by 12. So because I'm an outsider from California, I've spent time here. I don't actually know the Twin Cities. I'm trying to get to know people. I'm trying to get to know organizations and artists. So I've just decided to make that the art. So I'm asking 12 people to introduce me to 12 artists, not all theater artists. So a range of disciplines: chefs, poets, novelists, muralists, and we will partner with 12 different neighborhoods throughout the Twin Cities, so Minneapolis, St. Paul, and areas in between. And each artist will work with local organizations, local groups, could be schools, churches, business associations, and create an artistic response to what they learn, to what they hear. And it could involve members of the neighborhood doing something. It could just be something that we all experience. But it'll culminate in I guess, a picnic. We'll call it a picnic. And we'll come together and just the neighborhood will see itself reflected back. Other people could come in and learn something about that community, that neighborhood. And at the end of it, we will do a bridge event where we'll bring all 12 neighborhoods together in a day-long event, and you can just learn something about your city, and people can meet one another, and really in doing that.
Okay, I love this. Yeah, this is really great.
Yeah, and that way, like, we can start to see what are people talking about? Like, what do people actually want to? What are the concerns? Like, what are the things that they're thinking about that we can help with?
So I have my head turned around this idea of season ticket and schedule and Friday night and all of that. I should reprogram my brain to like, do you do this on Thursday nights, or like how do people?
Breakfast on a Thursday morning. It could be a Saturday afternoon, and just bring the family and we'll meet up at the park. Yeah, it won't be in the theater.
So if somebody wants to follow it, then what do I do? Like, if I want to support this work as an individual, and both being there and funding, like, how do I do that?
You contact the theater, and we're in the process of putting together the schedule, putting together the artists, and so we'll have that information so that you know when to put it into your calendar. And right now, so like right now, if you have artists or neighborhoods that you want to like say, hey, like, this is a great place that you should know about, give me a call, let me know. If it's work that you want to support, like contact the theater company, because this is, it takes a lot to, like, we're going to places where theater and art making doesn't typically happen.
Well, I'm really excited about it. And just to finish, I know people want to know what's next with Jack Reuler.
I consider myself second only to you in being a cheerleader for the city of Minneapolis, and I too, I had reflections upon that in the last couple of years, but my family is 5 generations in the Twin Cities, and I plan to stay here. I did go to, during COVID, I went to the law school and got trained as a mediator, so doing some family mediation and social justice mediation, and we're going to do some work with the Innocence Project, but I'm going to get to direct a show that we did in CHS Field a few years ago. It's really a play about immigration policy as seen through a lens of baseball, and so I'm going to get to do that in the Angels Spring Training Stadium in Phoenix in January. All right. And some other projects like that. But I'm going to find out who I am without this title defining me.
Well, there's a lot more that we need out of you, Jack, and we're going to get an awful lot out of you, Mark. Thank you so much. This is really great, and I look forward to attending Mixed Blood events, breakfast, lunch, dinner,
yes,
whenever.
Whenever.
All right, good.
Different neighborhoods. Yeah.
Good. Thank you both very much.